Imagine waking up at 5:30 in the morning. The sun hasn't even risen yet. But inside a massive poultry farm, thousands of chickens are already awake. Fans are running, water systems are flowing, and automated feeders are getting ready for another day. From the outside, this might look like an ordinary farm, but inside, it's a highly controlled production system. Thousands of living animals are being managed simultaneously, and every decision affects the farm's bottom line. A modern poultry farm isn't simply a place where chickens live. It's a business built around feed, technology, labor, infrastructure, logistics, and timing. And when thousands of chickens are involved, even a tiny change in cost can become a very large number. So how much money can a poultry farm actually make? And more importantly, how much money do you need before you can even get started? To answer that, we need to follow the money from the moment the farm is built to the moment the chicken reaches the consumer. The first major decision is land. You need enough space for poultry houses, roads, feed storage, water systems, waste management, utilities, and potentially future expansion. And depending on where the farm is located, land can represent a significant part of the initial investment. But land alone doesn't produce anything. You need buildings. Modern poultry houses can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a large operation may require several of them. These aren't simple barns. They're carefully engineered environments designed to keep thousands of birds healthy and growing efficiently. A commercial poultry operation can contain multiple enormous houses lined up across a property. Each one represents a major investment in steel, insulation, ventilation, electrical systems, feeding equipment, water systems, and climate control. Walk inside one of these buildings, and you'll see something very different from a traditional farm. Long feeding systems run through the house. Water lines hang above the birds. Large fans control airflow, while sensors constantly monitor the environment. Automation is one of the reasons modern poultry farms can operate at such enormous scale. Instead of workers manually feeding every chicken or filling every water container, machines do much of the repetitive work. The farmer's job becomes managing the entire system. In some ways, a modern poultry house works like a factory. But there's one huge difference. The machines are alive, they eat, grow, breathe, and require constant attention. And unlike manufactured products, they can't simply be turned off when market conditions become unfavorable. Let's start with broiler farming. Broilers are chickens raised primarily for meat. The goal is simple: raise healthy birds quickly and efficiently while using as little feed, energy, and labor as possible. The farmer is essentially trying to convert feed into body weight. Every day matters. Every pound matters. And every improvement in growth efficiency can potentially increase the farm's profitability. But not all poultry farms work this way. Some specialize in eggs, others specialize in meat. Broiler farms focus on growth and processing, while egg farms keep laying hens for a much longer production period. That means the two businesses track different numbers. A broiler farmer watches growth rate, feed conversion, mortality, and market weight. An egg producer focuses on egg production, feed consumption, egg quality, and the market price of eggs. Now comes the expensive part. Building the operation. A serious commercial poultry farm can require a very large amount of capital before the first chicken even arrives. And much of that money goes into infrastructure that will hopefully generate income for many years. Feeders, water systems, fans, heaters, sensors, electrical equipment, generators, and maintenance tools all add to the bill. The farm may look simple from the road, but underneath that roof is a sophisticated network of equipment. Then there are feed silos. Large farms need huge amounts of feed, so it has to be stored on-site. Delivery trucks can fill these silos, and automated systems can then move the feed directly into the poultry houses. Water is equally important. Thousands of birds need clean water every day. So modern farms use automated drinking systems connected to large water supplies. A problem with the water system can quickly become a serious problem for the entire flock. And then there's electricity, fans, Pumps, feeders, heaters, cooling systems, and sensors all depend on power. That's why backup generators can be critical. A power failure isn't just an inconvenience when thousands of animals are inside a building. Eventually, the first major shipment arrives day-old chicks. They're tiny, fragile, and almost impossible to compare with the birds they'll become. But economically, each one is already an investment. At this stage, temperature and care are extremely important. The chicks need warmth, water, feed, and a controlled environment. A strong start can have an impact on the entire production cycle. Now imagine doing this with 100,000 birds. Suddenly, a tiny problem isn't tiny anymore. A small percentage of losses can represent thousands of birds and a significant financial impact. That's why farmers and workers inspect the flock carefully. They monitor bird health, feed consumption, water access, temperature, and behavior. The goal is to identify problems before they become expensive problems. And now we reach one of the most important parts of poultry economics: feed. For many poultry operations, feed represents the largest operating expense. Every chicken has to eat every single day. Much of poultry feed depends on agricultural commodities such as corn and soybean products. So the economics of a chicken farm are connected to farms growing crops hundreds of miles away. When grain prices move, poultry farmers feel it. Feed trucks constantly move through the supply chain, delivering thousands of pounds of feed to poultry farms. For a large operation, these deliveries aren't occasional events. They're part of the normal rhythm of the business. Now imagine feed prices suddenly increase. The chickens still need exactly the same amount of food. The farmer can't simply tell the flock to eat less because grain became more expensive. That additional cost comes directly out of the farm's margin. And chickens eat a lot of feed over the course of a production cycle. That's why farmers care deeply about how efficiently birds convert feed into weight. The better the conversion, the more valuable each pound of feed becomes. This is called feed conversion. Essentially, farmers want to produce as much useful weight as possible from every unit of feed. A small improvement may sound insignificant, but multiplied across tens of thousands of birds, it can become a major financial advantage. Two farms could raise similar chickens and still have very different results. One might waste more feed, use more energy, or experience higher mortality. The other might manage those costs better. Over several production cycles, that efficiency gap can become enormous. Temperature and air quality are also critical. Massive fans continuously move air through the poultry house. This helps control heat, humidity, and air quality, especially when thousands of birds are producing body heat inside a confined building. Modern farms use sensors and computerized systems to monitor conditions. The farmer can see what is happening inside the building and adjust the environment when necessary. Technology doesn't eliminate risk, but it can help reduce it. Hot weather can be especially dangerous. When temperatures rise, ventilation and cooling systems become extremely important. A farmer may spend more on electricity during extreme heat, but keeping the flock healthy is far more important than saving a little power. Cold weather creates a different challenge. The farm may need additional heating to maintain the right environment. That means higher energy consumption and another variable that must be included in the economics. Now imagine the electricity suddenly goes out during extreme weather. Fans stop, automated systems stop, and thousands of birds are still inside. This is exactly why poultry farmers invest in backup systems. A backup generator can immediately become one of the most valuable pieces of equipment on the property. It keeps critical systems running when the main power supply fails. It's an expense that you hope you never need, but you're very glad to have when something goes wrong. Even with automation, people remain essential. Workers inspect the birds, monitor equipment, clean facilities, perform maintenance, manage deliveries, and respond to unexpected problems. A farmer can't simply look at the flock once a week. Daily observation matters. Changes in bird behavior, water consumption, feed consumption, or environmental conditions can provide early warning signs. And equipment eventually breaks. A fan motor can fail, a conveyor can stop, a sensor can malfunction. Maintenance is therefore not just another expense. It's part of keeping the entire production system alive. Even something as simple as a leaking water line can become a serious problem if it's ignored. That's why workers need to react quickly. In poultry farming, time can have a direct financial value. The same is true for feeding equipment. If an automated system stops working, thousands of birds can be affected. A technician might have to work immediately, sometimes outside normal working hours, because the animals can't wait. Then there's biosecurity. Poultry farms have to take disease prevention seriously. Workers may need protective clothing, clean footwear, controlled access, and strict sanitation procedures before entering poultry houses. Equipment and high-contact areas may need regular disinfection. The goal is simple: reduce the chance that harmful pathogens enter the operation. Even visitors can become a potential risk. That's why commercial farms often control who enters, where they go, and what procedures they follow. When you have tens of thousands of birds under one roof, disease prevention becomes an economic necessity. A disease outbreak can be devastating. The farmer may have already invested heavily in chicks, feed, labor, energy, and infrastructure. Losing birds after those costs have already been incurred can create a major financial loss. Veterinarians and animal health professionals can therefore become an important part of the operation. They help identify health problems and advise farmers on prevention and flock management. Not every bird survives to market. Some losses are expected, but farmers work to keep mortality as low as realistically possible. Every additional loss can represent feed, labor, energy, and potential revenue that has already been spent. As the flock grows, the economics become increasingly visible. The birds are consuming more feed, the equipment is working continuously, and the farmer is getting closer to the moment when the flock becomes a saleable product. A healthy flock approaching market size represents months of management and investment. At this point, the farmer wants everything to continue operating smoothly until harvest. The farmer checks the birds and monitors their growth. The timing matters because holding birds longer means additional feed and operating costs, while sending them too early can mean less marketable weight. Eventually, harvest day arrives. The birds are collected and prepared for transport. After weeks of feeding and managing the flock, the farm is finally ready to turn its biological production into revenue. The birds leave the farm and travel toward the processing facility for the farmer. This is a major transition point. The flock is leaving the farm, and another production cycle will eventually begin. At the processing facility, the chickens move through another highly organized part of the supply chain. Processing, packaging, cold storage, and distribution all add value before the product reaches consumers. The chicken that eventually reaches a supermarket has passed through an enormous network. Farm, feed supplier, transportation, processing, distribution, retail, and finally the consumer are all connected. When a shopper picks up a package of chicken at the supermarket, the price they see includes the economics of the entire supply chain. The farmer does not simply receive the full retail price. Back at the farm, the owner is looking at production numbers. How many birds were raised? How much feed was used? What was the mortality rate? What did the operation earn? And most importantly, what remained after expenses? This is where many people misunderstand farming. Revenue can look enormous when you're producing hundreds of thousands of pounds of chicken. But that money has to cover a huge list of expenses before it becomes profit. Feed, labor, electricity, maintenance, insurance, taxes, transportation, financing, and equipment replacement can consume a large portion of the revenue. A farm can generate a lot of money and still have a relatively modest final profit. And if the farm was financed with debt, loan payments continue, regardless of how good or bad the current flock is performing. That creates pressure to keep the poultry houses productive. This is one of the biggest risks of expansion. Borrowing money can allow a farmer to build a much larger operation, But debt also increases the amount of money that has to be paid every month. Now, let's look at egg production. Instead of raising chickens for a single harvest, the farmer maintains laying hens that produce eggs over a much longer period. Modern egg farms can use automated systems to collect eggs and move them toward processing and packaging areas. This allows a relatively small workforce to manage an enormous number of eggs. When you have tens of thousands of laying hens, the daily production can be substantial. But every egg still has a cost attached to it, because every hen needs feed, water, housing, energy, and care. The farmer is constantly balancing production against cost. How many eggs is each hen producing? How much feed is she consuming? How long should she remain in the flock? And what price can those eggs command? Consumers notice when egg prices rise. But farmers operate inside a much larger market. Supply, disease, feed costs, transportation, and demand can all influence the final price. Poultry markets can change quickly. A farmer who looks profitable today may face very different conditions several months later. That's why monitoring the market is just as important as monitoring the chickens. The farm is connected to commodity markets through feed. Corn and soybean prices can influence production costs, sometimes dramatically. This means a poultry farmer has to pay attention to markets far beyond the farm itself. Weather adds another layer of uncertainty. Extreme heat, storms, cold temperatures, or other environmental events can increase costs and create operational risks. That's why good farmers prepare for problems before they happen. Many commercial poultry farmers operate under contracts with larger poultry companies. These arrangements can provide access to chicks, feed, technical support, and a processing relationship, while the farmer provides the land, buildings, equipment, and management. This is where scale becomes powerful. A larger operation can spread certain costs across more birds. The same infrastructure, management systems, and equipment can potentially support much higher production. But larger scale also means larger financial risk. At this point, you can see what a poultry farm really is. It's not simply a building full of chickens. It's an integrated business involving land, construction, technology, feed, labor, health management, transportation, financing, and market access. Every chicken represents an economic equation. How much did it cost to buy? How much feed did it consume? How much energy did it require? Did it survive? How much weight did it gain? And ultimately, how much revenue did it generate? When you're managing tens of thousands of birds, tiny percentages matter. A small improvement in feed efficiency, mortality, growth rate, or energy use can translate into thousands of dollars over multiple production cycles. The most successful poultry farmer isn't necessarily the person with the biggest farm. It's the person who understands the numbers, controls costs, manages risk, maintains efficiency, and knows when expansion actually makes financial sense. From cornfields and soybean farms to feed mills, poultry houses, trucks, processing plants, distribution centers, supermarkets, and finally consumers, poultry connects an enormous economic network. And at the end of another long day, the farmer watches the sun set over the poultry houses. Inside, thousands of chickens are still eating, growing, and preparing for the next stage of the cycle. The entire business can be reduced to one simple idea: inputs go in, chickens and eggs come out, and the farmer hopes the value created is greater than the cost of producing it. That's the economics of owning a poultry farm. It can generate serious revenue, but it requires serious capital, constant management, and careful control of risk. Because when you're raising thousands of living animals, every small decision can become a very big number.